um, but I figured I would try. If you double tap on my video screen, you should enlarge it and you may be able to see a lot better. So I'm going to try to stay in frame. Try. So first of all, I want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity. I've been very grateful over the years to be able to express the way that I believe through music and once in a while through a few words with you all. And I've been very, very, very grateful to be part of this group of amazing people. It's been, I would say, quite a long time. I guess in the scale of a teenager. It's been 15 some odd years that I've been part of the fellowship, I'd say. The title, we'll just get right into this because I know I ain't got a lot of time and I don't want to waste all this time. But the title of the teaching, I guess you'd say, or what I wanted to talk about, is Dharma, the Conscious Evolution. I'm sure some of you all have studied Hinduism to a certain extent, possibly Buddhism. So you may be familiar with the term Dharma. For me, how did I come to experience or study or know about Eastern religions is kind of a long story. But to go back, let's go back a little bit further. When I actually was an ordained minister, that was for a very brief time. My dad is a pastor and a minister and a teacher, high school teacher. He was an engineer for the Southern Pacific Railroad for many years. And as being a pastor, he was part of the Foursquare Gospel Church, specifically the one out of Prescott, Arizona, and its outreach churches. So it was a very evangelical or fundamental institution. Originally, he was a Mormon. My family on my dad's side are founding, I guess you could say, founding members of the Mormon Church. My great-great-great-grandfather founded Ogden, Utah. His statue is in the middle of the town square. His name is Thomas, his name is Patrick Brown, James Patrick Brown. He was part of the Mormon army and he served in the Civil War and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so anyway, so my dad got steep into that church. And so I was, brought into it. My dad and mom were divorced. So I got in, started living with my dad. I got into the church. It was very intense. Evangelical churches can be pretty extreme as far as their indoctrination in classes and Bible studies and programs and outreaches and music programs and all these other things. And so I got pretty deep into that, and that's when I got ordained. I only ministered for about a year, only in the church that I was at. But in the meantime, when I was studying fundamental Christianity, one of the things the Foursquare people do, or the fundamentalists do, is they love to take the Bible down to the original language. And there are books that will take the books of Moses, the books of the prophets, down to as what scholars believe were the original or close to the original documents that the English translations were made of. And then you can actually study, and I expect even in the New Testament, the Greek writings of the New Testament, some of the Gospels. And now they've even included Aramaic to a sense, but Aramaic is still a dead language. Nobody speaks Aramaic. It was only resurrected for a movie that Mel Gibson made. He created that entire language from writings. Nobody knows what Aramaic sounds like because it died a very, very long time ago. But we do have their writings, right? So, and they have been translated. So the people get into exactly what does the Bible say. So it leads to a lot of study. Now, I left the church when I joined the Navy. And when I joined the Navy, I was in, I guess you would call cryptology. Some would say naval intelligence. You could call it what you want to call it. But I was stationed on the West Coast, and I spent 5 years at sea and overseas. 3 of those years were overseas. In Japan, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, China, Taiwan, Singapore, Thailand, etc., etc. Oman, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, some of the places that you've read a lot about probably in the last 15, 20 years. I was involved, I was in combat in the Persian Gulf War in the 90s. In those 56 days, I was forward stationed in the Northern Arabian Gulf, and that's really all I can talk about. But that's what we did. We fired a lot of missiles, hit a couple of mines, you know, blew up a bunch of oil derricks, blew an island apart, you know, war, right? So anyway, that's where I got exposed, thankfully, to Buddhism and to Hinduism. Hinduism through the back door, Buddhism up front, because when you spend time in Thailand, you see a lot of Buddhist temples. They're very beautiful. It's part of the way of life in Thailand. I was intrigued, and a couple of times I went and actually tried to talk to a few of the monks, and there was very few that would speak to you. But I was lucky once to talk to a monk outside of Bangkok. He was educated in the United States, and he had no vow of silence or anything, and he actually sat down and talked to me for a little bit about it. And I was intrigued, you know, coming from the Western society, I was very intrigued about the holistic approach to Eastern philosophy, or what some of us would consider a religion, but it's really more of a philosophy or a way of life. And specifically the duality that I always experienced in Christianity, where, you know, you are this, there is a heaven, there is a hell, there's this spirit world, or there's that spirit world. This one doesn't really matter. This one's just a, you know, I don't know, a test. And if you get it right, maybe you're going to get up here to this other place, which you can't see. Nobody's ever been there. And, you know, this duality of spirituality and the physical world always cause conflict in my mind, especially in Christianity, and especially in fundamental Christianity, because they teach that if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, that when you die, you're going to go to the judgment day. And if he doesn't know you, you're out. No questions asked, you know, and that didn't fit. The older I got, the more I studied, that didn't fit with the actual world that we live in. And it was a reality even in the 80s that there was more people over on the other side of the world that believed in something totally different than what we did. And they didn't know anything about Jesus or Judaism or Christian Judaism. They were never exposed to it. They lived and died thousands of years. And some of those people were very, very good people. And there is no way that they would be judged by a God and said, you don't know who this is? Get out of here. So that was my main rift with Christianity. And it will remain a rift. I don't see the duality in Christianity to me, is a outright lie. And it's misleading. It leads people to suffering. It leads this world and this nation to division. So I've never really been a fan of Christianity. In a personal sense, it divided my family. I mean, when me and my dad's relationship broke up, he didn't have anything to do with me for quite a long time because I didn't go to the church. And we finally got past that, thank God. You know, me and my dad have a great relationship now. But that was a very strange experience, to say the least, you know. You add divorce and then you add a religion on top of it, and those things become in the way of the love that you have for your family member. So that kind of divisiveness and divisionness, us versus them, never played for me. So back to Dharma. Dharma is many things, but basically Dharma comes from the Hindu religion. Here you can see one of the main symbols of Hinduism, which is the symbol in Sanskrit for Om, which is considered the sacred sound or the sacred meditative sound that you can make while centering yourself, that will connect you with everything. And what you find out in Buddhism, which comes from Hinduism is that just like Buddha, just like Jesus, I would say, was not a Christian. Jesus was a Jewish priest. So Buddha was not a Buddhist, he was a Hindu. So all of Buddhist teachings still revolve around the basic beliefs of Hinduism. The same with Jainism. And consequently, for example, let's just go quickly over history. The Indus Valley is where the Hindu people are from. The word Hindu means people of the Indus Valley. The word Hindu means the beliefs of the people of the Indus Valley. Archaeologically, we know that the Indus Valley is one of the very first places of civilization, as old as Egypt, back into antiquity, archaeologically 3,500 years before Christ. Same with what you would call Mesopotamia, which is in Iraq and the Tigris-Euphrates River. That civilization, same timeline. So in the very beginning of all civilization, these people began. And about 1200 BC, we start finding a codified religion, what they call the Vedic, that revolves around what they call Brahma. Brahma is the creator God. Brahma is also you, me, everything that's in creation. Everything is one. There is no, yes, there's gods in Hinduism, but they are all part of Brahma. Everything is Brahma. You are Brahma. I am Brahma. The grass is Brahma. The tree is Brahma. The rocks are Brahma. And from that structure comes Buddhism and also Jainism. Consequently, sideline, at about 600 BC, Buddhism and Jainism were both developing. Buddha was teaching, and so was the Mahariva. So at the same time that these men were, basically you could consider them almost like Christ was a Judaic reformist, guess what Buddha and Mahariva were? They were Hindu reformists. Why? Well, the Hindu structure says that we're all part of this one thing, but everybody has a place in that part. Everybody needs to stay and do their thing, and they call that Santanama Dharma, which means basically the best way to translate it in English is the universal, eternal truth or duty of mankind. This is what we were put on earth to do. So Dharma means belief. Dharma means a way of being who you need to be in this oneness. But in the Hindu tradition, everybody needed to stay in their lane. That's where the entire idea of reincarnation comes from, is that we're all in a step, right? Everybody's in a step of life, and as you do well where you were born, then you get, and you pass away, then hopefully you'll pass on to the next realm, and so on and so forth. Now, the idea of nirvana was inaccessible in Hinduism. That's where the gods live. That is the everything. Nirvana is part of Brahma, but the essence of Brahma is nirvana. So it's the bigger, it's the cosmos, let's think, right? So that was kind of inaccessible to human beings. So you got to think, 500 years, these people are dealing with this, where you stay in your lane, do what you're supposed to do, and if you're in India, they still have a caste system. If you're born this way, to this wealth, to this type of person, you stay in your lane. So what did Buddhism give you? Well, Buddhism was a way to break the cycle. So was Jainism. Now, Jainism was focused more on, I guess, perfecting through your lives, each successive life becoming more and more holy, until finally, as you've let go of more and more things, sacrificed more, you would continue to rise until you could become a god. But it was all through your acts, successive lives of giving things over. One of the first things of Jainism was renouncing violence to all living things. You could not kill any animal anymore or any person. Nonviolence is at the core of Jainism. And it's in some Buddhist sects as well. So you'll find places where they don't, in Buddhism, they don't believe in killing flies, bugs, you know what I mean? Cutting trees down. Some of these things come from Jainist ideas that are still in Buddhism. So what we come back to in Buddhism is the Dharma. And in Buddhism, the Dharma is an 8-step way of breaking the cycle of life and death. When Buddha spoke of monks, when we read about Buddha speaking of monks, the word monk is bhikkhu. The word bhikkhu means those who understand the fear of the cycle of life and death. So, the 8 steps of Dharma, of the Buddhist Dharma, are all centered around controlling your mind, and then therefore controlling your life and making improvements from the inside out. And that's what really attracted me to Fellowship of the Spirit, New Thought, Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer. They all approach Western philosophy with a Buddhist idea of it starts inward and goes outward. So some of the things that I noticed, basically we'll go quickly over the 4 Noble Truths of Buddhism. This is where you have to be to get where you need to go. The first one is you have to read, they call it dukkha, is that existence is suffering. The first thing you got to go is that this whole thing that we're into is causing us the pain, the anger, the anguish, the lack of happiness, basically, and stopping us from reaching the goal of nirvana or peace or changing, I guess you could say. And then it's the next concept, and this is where Science of Mind and New Thought tie right in, is Trishna. And basically that's the idea that because this life teaches us suffering, we get attached to things. We get attached to people, to our identity, and what you would think is your ego, the thought of who you think you are, and all these attachments that you have, your love life, your family, your history, all these mental constructs, which will inevitably pass away. Everything you can think about yourself will change. Everything you thought about yourself when you were younger isn't what you think about yourself now. So as we build mental constructs and we attach ourselves to our ego, I guess you could say, or things that are unreal, we suffer. That suffering leads us and keeps us in this cycle. So the way to break out of it is to first realize that it is all suffering, right? That attachment to the things in this world causes you suffering. And then the only way out is a Dharma. A Dharma is a practice, a holy and eternal practice. It's not something that you should do. It's something that you're gonna do in this life, whether you believe it, whether you're doing it now or you're not. So let's look at that and the twin thing. And I could read a little bit to you. Let's read some of Buddha's words real quick, and I'll wrap this up for you. And this is these are 18th century, well, I'd say 19th century translations, but they're considered pretty darn close. There's not a lot of direct writing attributed to the Buddha, and the ones that are have been passed on and written down immediately and passed on through the ages. This is not something like, there was no writing back in these days. Yes, there was writing. This is history. This is real. Buddha was a real person. The Mahariva was a real person. It's not, we don't know, who this is, okay? So anyway, he talked about how in this life, because of our mind, we create duality. And so this is called the twins. One, Mind is the forerunner of all actions. All deeds are led by mind, created by mind. If one speaks or acts with a corrupt mind, suffering follows, as a wheel follows the hoof of an ox pulling a cart. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. All deeds are led by mind, created by mind. If one speaks or acts with a serene or peaceful mind, happiness will follow, surely as one's shadows follows one as he walks. If you say, he abused me, mistreated me, defeated me, robbed me, harboring such thoughts keeps hatred alive. He abused me, mistreated me, defeated me, robbed me. Releasing such thoughts banishes hatred for all time. Animosity does not eradicate animosity. Only by loving kindness is animosity dissolved. This law is ancient and eternal. There are those who are aware that we are always facing death. Knowing this, they put aside all contentiousness with each other. The one who lives for sensation, unrestrained, indulgent in eating and living, irreverent, lazy, well, life and chaos will break you, just as the wind breaks a skinny tree. The one who lives mindfully, senses under control, moderate in eating, devout, energetic, cannot be overthrown by chaos, just as the wind cannot shake a rocky mountain. So it's about the discipline of the mind. If you want to further study Buddhism and the 8 steps, they've been fairly translated into, right. The first steps of wisdom is the right understanding of what we're living in, coming to grips with what this is, and then learning how to think correctly, right thinking. Okay, and those are the first 2 steps, and they're integral into New Thought. They're integral in a Course of Miracles. They're integral in conversations with God. There are, of course, big differences between Buddhist philosophy. I wouldn't say big differences, but there are differences between a Course in Miracles approach, because it's I guess you'd say that in the Course in Miracles, they like to refer a lot to healing. They believe in the illusion, right? That your ego has created an illusion, just the same as in Buddhism. You create, as a matter of fact, in Buddhism, our consciousness that we have created is the illusion. And what you're looking for through meditation and practice of the 8 ways, eating right, thinking right, acting right, living right, concentrating right, right mindfulness. There's a whole bunch of them. There's 8 spokes, and the 8 spokes lead you to the center. The center is not your consciousness. The center is not your consciousness. Your consciousness is what's created the suffering. Your attachment to this world, what you believe is you, what we call the ego, is causing you suffering. So you got to work on the no self, right? And that's where the concept of giving and receiving become basic. That's not even a concept. You have to give. That is part of your Dharma. And the truth of Buddhism and the truth of Hinduism is you will get it, whether you study now and you try hard now, or you don't. Eventually, your life is going to put you in this circle where you are going to resolve the things in your life that you need to resolve, whether it takes 1 life, 2 lives, or like now, right? This is one thing where this really ties into now for me. I've always spoke, if you guys have been around me, every once in a while you hear me, that the fight isn't over when I speak about civil rights. And it is true. The fight was not over, is not over. Now you think to yourself, 50 years. It was 1968. It was 1969. We were in the streets demanding change. Here we are again. Society and us, we are one. Everything in human beings, we are an expression of the one. So we will, whether it comes through a lot of suffering or we decide to enlighten ourselves and spread enlightenment to the ones around us to try to help short circuit this. But by hook or crook, this universe is going to create peace. By hook or crook, there will be peace. There will be equality. And that's the twins, right? It doesn't matter what your intent is. Your intent's just going to cause you suffering. The universe abides. It will change. It will evolve. So what is our part? My part, how does this affect me? Well, I've been looking this as a point of change. I've never, ever stood back from what I believe is the rights of people that are oppressed in our society and other societies. That's something I saw when I traveled abroad. The disparity in this world can be extremely shocking. With that said, it is time for humanity to be kind and loving and forgiving and open-minded to each other. And it is time for us to support the change in every small way we can. None of us, I'm sure most of us, aren't going to go out in the streets and protest. But we can lend a hand to those who do. We can lend a voice. We can't go out there and totally change the racism and the disparity in our world. But what can we do? We can change our minds about the racism and disparity. And then when we're out there and we see racism and disparity, we speak up. We don't stand by idly and just let things keep going as they are. Oh, well, you know, my business, my this, my politics, my dad, my mom, my religion. If it's everything is utility in your life, then you're missing the point. You can't use things to make things. You have to be peaceful. You have to be kind. That's our Dharma. So that's what it means to me. There's several books that I take some of these references from. One of the best books was written in 1993. And I was so happy because I've had this copy of this book since 1993. And there's actually copies at church, at that Fellowship of Spirit. And it's called An Introduction to Buddhism. This pretty much distills a lot of Buddhism down to Western understanding, goes through all the different sects. Of course, there's many different sects of Buddhism that focus on the different spokes and different ways of achieving the same thing. I mean, you're talking about a belief system that is very, very old. So there's a lot of different sects: Shintoism, Theravada, Tibetan. I mean, but this book breaks it down. Another book, where is my bibliography? Where did she go? That you can look at is a book called Ancient Religions from Belknap Press. It was written originally in 2003, but now it's released in 2007. Of course, A Course in Miracles, right? And Conversations of God. Now, with A Course in Miracles, there's some really interesting things that I think, you guys might really like here. Just to go over this real quick. Here's a quote: "Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God." Once again, talking about the illusion, right? About meditation, the Course in Miracles. "In quietness, all things are answered." About ego, right? "What you think you are is a belief that must be undone." So all these concepts relate back to the Buddhist concepts of realizing that your consciousness has made constructs, had made, sometimes you could think of them as, they call them heaps, little things in little rooms that you've gathered together and say, this is me, this is me, this is me, this is me. But what you're missing is the room that it's in. That's you. It's not the things in the room, right? And that's the getting to the no self, or what they call the Atman, not the unself, but the no self. So that's Dharma to me. Namaste.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.